and Q okay? Rob? Oh. Good evening. You're listening to Raven Radio KCAW Sitka. It's 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, September 15th. I'm reporter Catherine Rose broadcasting live from the Cable House tonight, and you're listening to Raven Radio's live mayoral candidate forum. Tonight, we'll hear from two candidates running for the mayor's chair. Joining me virtually this evening are Assemblymember and Deputy Mayor Stephen Eisenbeis and the incumbent Mayor Gary Paxton. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And before we get started, I'm just going to do a little housekeeping. Just a reminder to the candidates and to the listeners before we begin. This isn't a debate, it's a forum, and that means it's an opportunity to compare your views and opinions on the city and a chance for voters to learn where you stand on key issues. That being said, you have your time and you can use it how you choose. So if you want to address another candidate's stance on an issue, you're welcome to do so. There is a 2-minute limit to each question, and I respectfully ask that you stick to that time limit so that each candidate has the opportunity to answer and we're able to get as many questions in as possible. News Director Robert Woolsey is in the air room, and he'll be holding a timer up to his computer screen so you know how much time you have left. And this year, since we aren't hosting a forum with an audience, we encouraged listeners to ask questions in advance, and many listeners submitted questions. So we're going to try to get to as many of those questions tonight as possible. So let's go ahead and get started. First, I want to ask you to introduce yourselves and briefly explain your platform. And we'll start with Stephen Eisenbeis.
It's always fun being the first one, and especially on Zoom. I really like having a crowd that I can look at and see. Makes me a lot more comfortable, which is kind of weird, but talking to a computer screen is odd. So hello, good evening. My name is Stephen Eisenbeis. Currently been on the Assembly now for just about 6 years. It'll be 6 years in October. Seems like a long time, but seems like a short time at the same point. Running for mayor this year. Not because our current mayor is doing a bad job. We all have to realize that this is Gary Paxton here, and I'm glad to be running with Gary Paxton. But because I bring a youthful leadership style that I believe can help Sitka. I've recently started a family here. As many people know, we do have a business downtown. We have a dog, Nugget, the downtown corgi, who many of you bring treats to on a daily basis. He thanks you for that. He is running to make sure that we get all those treats worked off of him. But the reason I'm running for mayor is because I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. I want to make positive changes now for the future of Sitka, because I'm going to have to live with those changes when I get older. I honestly believe that with some hard work now, some dedication, we can turn Sitka to a place that everybody's going to love. We're having a little bit of a hard time right now with COVID. We were having a little bit of a hard time last time I ran for Assembly too. I think that's going to be normal, but definitely want to use the experience I've gained in the last 6 years on the Assembly to leave Sitka a better place than I found it. And I will be here for the next generation Sitka.
Thank you, Stephen. Gary Paxton, your answer to the question.
Steve, thank you for your good work on the Assembly. You're a valued member. I'm running for mayor for two broad reasons. The first is the crisis we had when the mill closed. This current crisis may be equal or more complex and difficult than that crisis. And I helped guide our city through that, and I think I could be a positive force in the future. The second major reason is unfinished business. I'm going to just list 5 things that need to be done in the next several months that are really critical to our community. First is the distribution of the CARES funding in a responsible, equitable, and as fast as we can manner. Second is to get the haul out done for our fishing village. We thought we were going to hear on the bill grant today, but we did not. Third is to be sure we hold search accountable to the affiliation that we've done with them. Um, Fourth is our lobbying efforts. Since last 2 years now, we've been lobbying our delegation for help on our Green Lake Dam. It's going to get relicensed. It's got a FERC requirements, turbine upgrades, and a distribution system to Ponce Island to support search, and then the new Coast Guard cutter. Federal entities, and they should help us do those things. Lastly is to work with the challenges in our 2020 and 2021 budget. Both of those budgets will probably be short about $3 or $4 million in sales tax, so that's going to be a challenge. Listen, like all you folks, like Steve, we all love this town. And I don't have a political agenda. The only agenda I have is for Sitka. And as best as I can, I make every decision in terms of what I think would be best for our town and our citizens.
That's time, Mayor Paxton. All right, let's move on to question number 2. What tangible things are you planning to do to accomplish your platform? So in the next 2 years, should you be elected mayor, what legislation do you plan to bring to the assembly table? And we'll start with you, Gary Paxton.
Well, presumptively, I'll just start with what I just talked about. I work with our administrator from a macro point on the as all assembly members do on the CARES thing. On the haul out, whether we get a build grant or not, I think our assembly and our community is committed to building the haul out. So that's going to be a top priority. The third, and I'll go back to the thing on the lobby. Listen, we can literally get tens of millions of dollars to help defray the cost of in Green Lake and to help do our waterfront projects, the Marine Service Center and the haul out. So those will be a priority. And then I guess a third priority would be, as you take a look at the 2 budgets I mentioned, 2020 and 2021, there are going to be challenges. And one of my platforms when I ran last year was to keep Sitka affordable, especially for that portion of our population on fixed incomes that increase electrical rates and sales of property tax is sort of a difficult. And that's going to be, quite frankly, a challenge because we've got to be able to fund city government. And I don't have the answer to that, but I will work diligently with the city staff. We've got a very talented finance department to try to resolve those things. And lastly, I'd say is I just want our assembly, our staff, and our community to be happy with one another, whether we agree or disagree. You know, we all are part of this and we all have a vested interest. Thanks, Catherine.
All right, Stephen?
Well, to start off, I guess it wouldn't be just me bringing anything to the table. Anything that's going to come to the table is going to have the concurrence of another assembly member as well. So while I have some thoughts, it's not just my ideas. It's going to be at least one other member of the assemblies. I'm actually really excited to work with our administrator and then his staff going forward. I was cautious when we hired John Leach, but I think he's doing an amazing job, and I'm excited to see where he wants to go and work with him to further some of his goals. I also think that the assembly as a whole needs to recognize city staff. Without them, we can accomplish nothing. They are the conduit through which we accomplish our missions and our goals. So I think we need to recognize that, and in some instances, take a step back and give them the recognition and the credit that they deserve for helping us accomplish our goals. The most important goal that I have is the review of our long-range infrastructure plans. Our long-range infrastructure plans right now have set us and locked us into rate increases to accomplish what at the time was deemed to be necessary infrastructure repairs, upgrades, and maintenance. And infrastructure maintenance is definitely important. We need to follow through on that. However, I hear frequently that our citizens are being overburdened on their ability to pay these rates that come with the long range plans. So, and it's not going to be an easy, but one way that we can perhaps mitigate rate increases in the next few years is to look at our long range infrastructure plans and edit as necessary. We need to look at them with an eye for citizens' ability to pay, not with an eye of how much are we going to have to charge our citizens to accomplish these goals.
Thank you for your response. And before we move on to our next question, I also forgot to mention if you didn't get the chance to email in a question in advance, you still can call to ask your question. The number is 747-5879 to ask a question of Gary Paxton or Stephen Eisenbeis, the two candidates for Sitka's mayor this year. You're listening to KCAW's Mayoral Forum. And our next question goes to Stephen. And the question came in from a few listeners. Aaron asked, what is the role of government? And I'll add to that the role of the assembly.
Interesting. To me, the role of the government is to carry out the citizens' wishes. I believe that we have formed ourselves and elected a government here in town so that it can carry on the day-to-day goals of running the city without having to burden the citizens to do that. At one point in time, if a boardwalk broke, it was up to the citizen themselves to go out and do that. Now that we've modified that to if a road fails, we have a crew for that. So the role of government is to be us. It is our representative, if I could speak this evening, government, and it really does need to be there for us. The role of the assembly is very much similar. We've been elected by the citizens, and we're there to carry out the wishes of the citizens. At times, citizens are going to not agree with all the decisions of the assembly, and not everyone out there agrees with all of my decisions. But I'm definitely there to listen, so that we can be a completely representative body of the people.
Thank
you for your response. Gary Paxton, 2 minutes. What is
I just want to say what Steve said concerning our staff is, in my view, very important. We have a talented staff that work hard and try to do the will of the people. Protection, fire and safety, and police, education are clearly key parts of government. And I think that we do that reasonably well, and especially in education, we're having something that's supportive of education. The utilities and all that they mean are also function of city government. And then I think Steve is wise. And then the assembly needs to have the capacity and the willingness to listen to citizens, what their concerns are, listen with, and then as best we can, try to implement policies that embrace that. And lastly, I guess I would say, this is my view, the assembly is at the policy macro level. We are not at the detail level. If we need detail on a certain issue, that's okie dokie, do that. But the details, and I'm not advocating responsibility, but that's staff's responsibility. And we need to, in my view, maintain our position at the macro level unless it's ever needed to get down into the weeds. Thanks.
All right, our next question comes from Paul. He asks, as Sitka's next mayor, what strategies will you employ to meet the challenges of a budget in the aftermath of a greatly decreased tourism season? And this will go to Gary Paxton first.
That's a tough question. And again, I've already mentioned that the 2020 and the 2021 budget are going to be a challenge. Again, we'll know in the next month or two how short we are in the 2020 budget, but we're probably going to be $3 or $4 million short. So one way you can control the cost of those budgets is, as Steve mentioned, really trying to be wise about how you do infrastructure. Having said that, our infrastructure is 50, 40, and 50 years old. And if you delay it, it's going to end up costing you more. So there's a balance between absolute need for infrastructure and the cost to our citizens. The strategy, I think, is to task staff, and we have a very capable finance department, to give us options, review those options with the public, so they can talk about and input on the different options, and then make the best and hard decision, if they have to be made, that you have to do.
All right, Stephen, 2 minutes.
And Catherine, just so I answered correctly, could you repeat the question for me?
I can, yes. The question from Paul was, as Sitka's next mayor, what strategies will you employ to meet the challenges of a budget in the aftermath of greatly decreased tourism season?
Great, thank you. It's undoubted that this next budget season is going to be the most stressful that I've ever experienced in my last 6 years. While the Assembly has had to make cuts previously, a lot of those cuts that you saw weren't noticed by our citizens. The services weren't decreased for the most part. We still had running, functioning city government. With a loss, I think the 3 to 4 million that has been thrown out before is a potential reality in the general fund. It's going to be hard to fund everything at the same level it's going to be impossible to fund everything at the same level in which we have been doing. So number one, I think we need to assess our citizens' needs and then prioritize those. If mowing the lawn, while that makes our town look great, is deemed less important than a toilet that flushes or electricity that comes on. And yes, I understand those are general fund and enterprise fund needs, slightly different there. It's not going to be sales tax revenue, but we need to prioritize what our citizens are actually going to need, what we can live without, and what we absolutely need as a town. Schools, public safety, those are things that are essential for our town. So those are going to have to continue. What can we live without? I don't know. There needs to be a lot of conversation around that, though, in what can we potentially forego for a year in order to make ends meet here. Because the last thing that anybody wants to hear right now is an assembly that looks at raising rates. There is no spare money floating through this town right now, between retail or fishing or whatever industry you're in. COVID has devastated it all. So the appetite for any rate increase this year is incredibly low, and I believe would not pass at the assembly table.
All right, this next question is from Courtney. Courtney asks, non-instructional funding for the Sitka School District allows more school funding to be spent in the classroom. Some examples of existing non-instructional support are maintaining the Blatchley Pool and partnering on insurance. As mayor, would you maintain current levels of non-instructional funding for the schools? And that question goes to Stephen first.
The easy answer there is to the best of our ability. I appreciate that the assembly has stepped up their level of funding in recent years. And then when you include, depending on your calculation, if you're at the cap or not, the school and the municipality use two different ratios to determine what's capped. But non-instructional is very important in order to maintain the longevity of programs within the district. So yeah, the short answer, yes. The longer answer is we're going to have to look at it all. I don't anticipate taking it away, and I don't anticipate funding schools at anything less than they are. To me, I kind of view school funding as our property tax. Property tax is a pretty solid base and will always be there. So that level of school funding should always be available. And then it's supplemented with some general fund money. So if we prioritize our schools, and if we prioritize some of the non-instructional school funding that is out there, to include the in-kind, we do maintenance on some vehicles, we do plowing of the school parking lots as well, that also saves them money. So then yes, we need to keep that. I think we also need to keep in the back of our mind, and I actually don't think I've thought about this for a little while, but I need to as well, is that our school buildings are aging, and currently there is not an infrastructure or a slush fund for it in order to replace our school buildings. So we need to start looking forward as well to building replacement and start allocating money now so that we don't have to bond to a massive amount when those buildings do need a complete replacement, because that is coming, that is inevitable, and it is going to be a big weight on our shoulders when that gets here.
Gary, 2 minutes for that question.
Yeah, concur. I think that Steve said, give you the right answer. I would just like to add, though, his last point is scary. Since state stopped funding 2/3 of the capital investment for schools, we now are paying like 2/3 of the state is paying 1/3, rather than it used to be 2/3, 1/3. The impact of not having the state recommit to public education to include capital projects is a violation of their charter, in my view. And I can't predict how that's going to go out, but we need to politically fight that. I have a good relationship with Bert Stedman, as well as our delegation, I might add. And so we just need, sometimes we need help from our elected officials, in this case, Bert Stedman, in the case of when the lobbying I was talking about before, to have our delegation ready to help do some heavy lifting to get us some funding. Because anytime we get some federal funding, they're not going to solve our problems. They're not going to sustain our economy. But they did, like in Green Lake, if we get funding for some of the things I talk about Green Lake, then that will maintain the rates where they are, or perhaps even decrease them.
Thank you. And before I ask the next question, just a reminder, if you didn't get to ask a question in advance, you can still call now, 747-5879. Again, 747-5879, and we'll try to ask the mayoral candidates your question. The next question is a public health question. This is from Gretchen. She asks, what obligation does government have to protect and promote public health? Where and from whom should city officials receive public health guidance? So I'll ask this first of you, Gary Paxton.
Well, I think in our current case, we receive it from the public nurse and from Dr. Brule in the EOC. I mean, I think you need to get, in public health, you need to get experts guiding us on what we can and should do. So that's the quick answer. What else am I done? What did I miss there?
What obligation does government have to protect and promote?
Got it. Yeah. Our obligation is similar to education and public safety. We have an inherent obligation to ensure we have a town that we do everything we can to have a healthy and robust health system.
Thank you. Stephen, 2 minutes for your response.
I believe the Assembly has an obligation to promote policy that does protect public health. I believe that they should get their guidance from not only the state level, but our local level as well. I certainly don't pretend to be an expert in public health, and would definitely look to outside sources for any sorts of decisions like that. Hopefully a wide range of outside sources so that I can get a more complete picture. As far as what guidance should the Assembly offer, a lot of the times I believe that the Assembly's decisions have to be tempered by citizens' desires. I think we saw that here recently. The Assembly was desirous of making a mask mandate throughout town, and the citizens did not have an appetite for that at the time. So while I believe that we should practice the best health policy that comes down from Dr. Zink, for instance, at our state level, Dr. Brule at our local level, we can't ignore the wishes of our citizens. We still have to listen to them on what ultimately they want in their town. this has been tackled by the assembly previously too. I think with fluoride as an issue. The assembly took up fluoride, and it became somewhat controversial for people. So it's not just COVID. There are lots of different issues that raise their head from time to time. And ultimately, for me, I have to listen to people who are a lot smarter in public health than I am. Dr. Zink, Dr. Brule, local citizens, and make policy that hopefully most of us can live with.
All right. Your next question comes from Charles. He says, I believe the Assembly wastes valuable time passing resolutions without legal effect and unenforceable ordinances, such as the child helmet and the texting/phoning while driving prohibitions, both of which are widely violated with citation. Do you agree or disagree? And that will go to Stephen first.
I don't believe that the assembly passing resolutions is a waste of our time. I believe the work on texting while driving was very important. I wasn't always in support of that. I found quite a lot of flaws within the ordinance itself, but I don't believe it to be a waste of time. I believe that the assembly needs to lead from the front. And if we aren't putting out resolutions indicating this has the potential to be what is best for citizens. And I believe when they're talking about unenforceable resolutions, it's with COVID and mask mandates. This is something that the assembly has learned that could be best practice, and we recommend this. Many citizens take a resolution indicating wishes a lot better than an order. I know a lot of people don't want to be ordered around by the assembly because they don't feel that that's our role. So if a resolution with a lot of good information indicating a possible best practice is available, then sure. Texting while driving, it is actually an enforceable ordinance. It is against the law. Tickets can be written if the person in question has concerns with that. I would encourage them to bring that up with the Police and Fire Commission, that then could bring that to the assembly, that perhaps we need a little bit more enforcement on that. I also believe that Chief Beatty is a very open person. I've had very, very good and frank conversations with him, and I believe he would be open to listening as well.
Gary Paxton?
Roger. Resolutions run a gamut from ones that are really important and need to be supported and get wide support both from the assembly and the public, to ones like you just talked about that are more are less resolute and are more individualistic. I don't think they're a waste of time. Whenever you have public comment at the assembly, whether the resolution passes or not, at least it becomes in the public domain. And the assembly has to deal with, think about the subject matter at hand. And even ones that are sort of marginal, like and by marginal in terms of enforcement, like the face mask, at least they set a standard of what we think people should do, and hopefully, have a positive impact and so forth. So yeah, individual freedom versus government control. Let's hope that debate continues for another 100 years.
Thank you both for your response to that question. Our next question was asked by several listeners. I've taken the liberty of combining a couple of questions here to make it a little more uniform and clear. And again, if you have a question, you can still call 747-5879 to ask questions of our two mayor candidates. We have Gary Paxton and Stephen Eisenbeis virtually joining us via Zoom for this candidate forum tonight. And this next question is about policing in Sitka. The city has settled 4 major lawsuits over police conduct in the last 5 years. Do you think the culture within the department needs to change? As mayor, how would you ensure there's more transparency about complaint investigations? And that will go to Gary Paxton first.
Right. That's a really important, excuse me, important question. And excuse me, Chief Beatty grew up here. His mother was a native lady. His father was a Coast Guard. He was 20 years state trooper. He spent time in multiple cities where he went in to help them up. His dream was to come to Sitka. Uh, and I know that he understands how important setting standards and training is. He's put in place both of those, both pursuit of standards as well as training. Uh, he is supposed to come to the assembly once every 3 months to give us an update. Sometimes he misses a month or so, but he does that. My view is open. The city administrator as well understands the importance of having a culture in our police department that is embraced by our citizens. When we meet with Sitka Tribe of Alaska, Kathy Erickson and Lisa Gassman and me and the administrator, we always talk about police relationships with teenagers, Native communities, senior citizens, whomever, the homeless. We get complaints about homeless people being moved at night when they're in a car. Listen, we need, excuse me, we need to do whatever we can to ensure our police department is helping our citizens. And when there is crime, then deal with that as they should. The lawsuits has been grievous. That all happened, before Beatty got here and before that I was on the assembly. The good news for our department of city, they've been solved, I guess is the right word, and disposed of. And I am reasonably comfortable and confident that under Beatty's leadership, we're going to move forward in a positive and constructive way. And that's also the responsibility of the assembly and the administrator to ensure that. So
That's time, Mayor Paxton. Stephen Eisenbeis, 2 minutes on the clock.
I think right now in America, policing is under scrutiny. I don't think I know this. You see it on the news every single day, and you hear it from all sides of the community. Policing, we will always need police officers. We will always need to support our police officers. And when citizens have complaints against officers, or in this case, when officers have complaints against other officers, those do need to be investigated, as the question went to. How do we get a better complaint investigation system? I don't know. The internal complaints I know did go through an internal panel, which comprised different members of city staff, but perhaps we need to look outside if those aren't satisfactory resolved. And I'm not sure if the question was looking towards, how do we deal with the internal issues, the internal strife that has happened at the Sitka Police Department in recent years, or if they're talking a little more broad. But we do need to utilize this opportunity to help police. Police are typically overburdened right now, and I want to see how we can utilize some additional assets for them. Mental health has always been an issue for officers to deal with. I worked at our corrections facility here, and we had to take in mental health patients, and we were not the correct facility for that. So getting people help that they truthfully need, as opposed to having to deal with perhaps the long arm of the law, I think will help alleviate concerns in the future and hopefully future lawsuits.
Thank you both for your response. And the next question is from Richard. And this is about the Blue Lake Dam. Richard asks, with the city, state, and country facing continued economic hardships, would you be in favor of renegotiating our payment plan for the Blue Lake Dam project? And that will go to Stephen first.
Uh, yes, we actually just did that. We renegotiated some of our bonds so that we're actually going to be saving. The exact figure isn't there, but in the range of $100,000 to $150,000 every year. So that is key. I believe that our staff has done a sufficient job at looking at different opportunities to refinance, because we all know that we are in this situation that the Blue Lake debt will need to be paid off. So we do have our hands tied slightly there, but if we utilized lower interest rates due to the Feds dropping their interest rate to renegotiate some of those bonds. So the savings in the long term, I believe, will be seen by the ratepayer. In the short term, there are some infrastructure needs that we have just to keep power flowing, but eventually that 150,000, 100 to 150,000, I don't want to be overly optimistic there, will come back to the citizens in the form that we don't have to raise rates in order to pay for these infrastructure repairs. If other people within the community have more ideas on how we can restructure this, then I'm all ears. But Jay Sweeney, he did a really good job at locating new or refinance options when rates did drop, and the assembly was able to take advantage of that.
Thank you for your response. Really quickly, you're listening to Raven Radio, KCAW, Sitka. Gary Paxton, your response to the question?
Sure, be glad to. When I went with our administrator shortly after I was elected to our delegation, I've already talked about our lobbying on Green Lake Dam. Listen, we also lobbied hard on the Blue Lake Dam. The facts are, when that dam was built, was going to be built, the feds are going to pay a third of it. Cost overruns happened, and the feds backed out. We have a $120 million loan. The state provided $30 million, but the feds did nothing. Our delegation knows that in spades. Now, whether they're going to find ways to renegotiate, they had some. We're interacting with USDA on ways that we could do the whole thing, go from 4% down to like 3% or lower. It's a long task, a hard task, with the flexibility at the federal level. But that I always key on Green Lake, because if we don't solve Green Lake, then we're going to have a problem with electrical rates. So I think that's a priority. But we are also talking to our delegation about Blue Lake as well. And our lobbyists in DC are also working on that. And we'll continue to do whatever we can to do that. Yeah, when you talk about the cost of city government, the biggest impact of city government and cost is electrical rates. Used to be a couple $100 a month. Now for most people, it's $400 or $500 a month.
Thank you both for responding to that question. Our next question comes from Math. He asks, if elected, what specific actions would you take to address systemic racism in Sitka? This goes to Gary Paxton first.
Well, I think how you conduct yourself on a daily basis. My belief, there is listen, I'm a man of faith, as most people know. You need to treat everybody with respect, and there's no room for bigotry and racism. Sometimes it's inadvertent. And how you eliminate racism, institutional racism, if and when it exists. First of all, you got to be able to identify it. If you can identify it, then like in a police department or wherever, then you can deal with it. Listen, I'm an old man now, 80 years old, and it's really alarming to see where, in my naivety, I thought we made a lot of progress in terms of our race relationships and racism, and clearly we still have a long way to go. And the nation is suffering because of that now, at cities and everywhere else. So it's something that we we cannot push under the rug. We need to face it front on and do our best to treat everybody as you want to be treated. And that's how I view that.
Stephen Eisenbeis?
I believe the first step that you need to take in dealing with systemic racism in Sitka is to recognize that the issue does exist. I think for a long time, I did not recognize that I was blind to the issue, that it did exist, because it didn't affect me personally the way that it affects so many others. So first step, you have to recognize that it does exist within the world and within the municipality. Second, I think an easy step is to review policy. Does any of our policy further systemic racism? Does it further marginalize groups who may be marginalized in town, or does it level the playing field more? Review the policy, make sure that that policy works for all and doesn't further put someone down. Then what you need to do is actively counter it at every opportunity. If you're in a conversation with someone and you see signs of, utilize what you may have learned in order to counter that, to present new points of view, to show other people's experiences. If you don't utilize an opportunity to counter it, you in essence further it. And then finally, learn. This is something that I am very much doing right now, learning more about systemic racism, how it affects people of different colors, and how it affects different groups within not only our municipality, but within our nation. And you need to learn other people's views and other people's experiences, because they don't have the same experiences that I do. I need to learn from their experiences so that I can help lead in a more inclusive, complete fashion.
Thank you both for your responses to that question. Our next question comes from Leah. She asks, many organizations in Sitka now begin their meetings with an acknowledgement that we stand on Tlingit Ani, Tlingit land, in their meetings or other communications. Would you support including such an acknowledgement in the Sitka Assembly's regular meetings? Why or why not? And this will go to Stephen first.
Yes, I think it was my turn to go first on this one. I'm not opposed to it, but I don't know enough about it yet. I know that many groups have added that. I would want to speak with some people at the Sitka Tribe of Alaska to see if this would be something that would honor or not. Because if it does honor, then sure, we should go for, or we have the potential to go forward with. If it doesn't honor in the ways that we anticipate, then I don't know. This is an issue of I still need to learn more. I would want to ask those questions because it's not my story to tell. So I wouldn't want to, again, force my way upon if that's not the correct thing to do. But there are others who know more about it, and I would be happy to listen.
Gary Paxton?
I think we need to have this in the public domain and a public discussion about it. Of all the different things we've talked to STA, Kathy and Lisa, when we meet with them, that has not been one. The seal has been one. There's been several things that we've done that to include, by the way. We've coordinated now where we share our hiring processes with the STA so they know who and how and when we're hiring, so they have the advantage of letting their citizens know that these positions may be available. So I'm sort of like Steve. I'm not. Ambivalent's a bad word. I'm not an ambivalent guy, but I think I need a good public discussion and some wise counsel on how to go forward on that issue. So.
Okay, our next question comes from Sue. She asks, how would you, so it's split into two parts. So the question for Mayor Paxton is, how would you rate your performance over the past 2 years as mayor? And for Stephen Eisenbeis, rate your performance when you filled in as deputy mayor when the mayor was absent. And then the second part to that question is, what is your strategy for keeping the meeting focused and respectful during difficult testimony should you be elected? So this will go to, I'll read that to you again, Gary Paxton.
I got it, Catherine.
Okay.
In terms of a grade beats me, I'll let the public decide. Some say yes, some say no. In terms of the meeting, listen, I give myself about a C on running meetings, but I intend to do it respectfully, both to the public and to the assembly. I've gotten criticized from time to time properly because when I cut off an assembly member's comments, and I've always apologized in public when I thought I was wrong and so forth. Yeah, we should conduct business in the assembly to deliver the body with civility and listening and so forth. But we also need to move forward with pace. And I am who I am with all my holes, and I do like to move with pace, and I do try to move the meeting along with a certain amount of pace. The truth is, by 10 o'clock, if we're still there, the other 6 assembly members may be as good as they ever were, but man, I'm tired. I think we need to make assembly meetings last 2 or 3 hours, not 3 or 4 hours, so we can make better quality decisions. And I'll do my best till I get elected to do better. Pax out.
Stephen, would you like me to repeat the question?
I think I have it, but thank you. I have had the opportunity to run a couple meetings while Gary wasn't available. And I think it was my leadership during those meetings that encouraged citizens to reach out to me to run for mayor. I believe that they were happy with how the meetings ran. I believe that they liked the conciseness of the meetings, that we got down to our business. We accomplished our business efficiently. I believe they liked the professionalism that they saw. I believe that they liked the respect that they saw as well. So those are the qualities that I feel that I'm going to bring to the table in leading the meeting, because the mayor's most important job out of all of it is to lead the meeting. On policy decisions, the mayor is but one of 7, but the mayor's key role at the assembly table is to keep the meeting going forward in an efficient manner. In order to accomplish that, as the second part of the question, you heavily have to lean on Robert's Rules of Order. We have adopted a modified Robert's Rules of Order, and those are our marching orders for assembly meetings. Those are our marching orders for public participation in assembly meetings. And those are what you need to rely on in order to run a efficient and thoughtful meeting. So I think I did okay leading the meeting. You can always do better. As time goes on, I have no doubt that I will learn how to run a better meeting, but relying on Robert's Rules of Order in order to get our business done, and encouraging the assembly to conduct their business in a professional, calm, and respectful manner as well.
Thank you both for your responses. The next question is from 2 local groups, the Sitka Citizens Climate Lobby and Youth for Sustainable Futures. They both asked very similar questions about climate change, so I've combined them here. Many Sitkans believe that climate change is the largest issue facing us, not only for federal and state governments, but especially local governments. What steps do you believe that local Sitka elected officials should pursue to combat climate issues? And this will go to Stephen first.
I think it's unfortunate that the climate change talks have not completely fallen off, but COVID has definitely taken priority over those recently. Sustainability was definitely ramping up in the community. More and more people were getting excited about sustainability on all levels, and we got hit with this little thing called COVID. So it is definitely still out there. The needs are definitely still out there. But we just have to get this COVID tackled first, and I think we can jump on that. You know, the exciting thing about COVID and sustainability, though, it's proven to us that if we want to act, we can act extremely fast. I haven't seen governments, organizations, institutions change as fast as COVID has made us change. So hopefully it makes us realize that if we see an issue with what we're doing, we have the opportunity and can modify our ways very quickly. I know it's extremely hard to fill seats on our boards, committees, and commissions right now, but I would be interested in a sustainability commission being formed to look over city policies, city ways, and see what we as a town can do better. Because sustainability to me starts here. We need to figure out how we can do it better as a town and start to lead by example as well. Again, I am not the expert on sustainability. I would need to call in other resources on that. But fortunately, we have the two groups that asked the questions already, and I believe that they are leading from the front on sustainability and could be relied on for answers to questions.
Gary Paxton?
Yeah, sustainability is critical in our fishing environment. I know that in discussions with the Second Tribe of Alaska, the herring issue is may or may not be climate related, but it's certainly sustainability related. Those are issues that need to be dealt with. How you get expertise to help guide you, I'm not sure I know how to do that. But as you deal with things as complex as that, they need to be in the public medium for a robust discussion, and somehow you need to get good science to help guide you. Yeah, I think Steve's idea of maybe some action at a commission level might be appropriate. Again, these things affect the whole town and a lot of the town and all the town in different ways. And so you need to have a good understanding of the full impact of what you are going to do in terms of taking a position on climate change.
Thank you both for your responses. This next question is from Michelle. She wants to know how, where, and why do you volunteer in the community? And this will go to Gary Paxton first.
How, where, and why you volunteer in the community? My Lord, there are so many different ways to do that. Within the city, of course, you got commissions. The municipal clerk can help guide. Our faith communities involved, the Sitka Conservation Society, STA are involved in supporting. I attended the food distribution system that Sitka Conservation Society does at the old Sheldon Jackson cafeteria. It was amazing, Catherine. They made up boxes for 3 days of food. And how many people had there volunteering? I don't know. It was too complex. I mean, I don't know, it was 20 or 40. But the point is, this town has amazing amount of people who volunteer on all sorts of ways that they're interested in. At the city level, though, I think you could probably talk to the call administration. Mr. Clerk might be able to help, but there are a lot of other avenues for support too in town. I've just mentioned a few of those: Faith Community, Sitka Tribe of Alaska, Sitka Conservation Society, Linda Bacon in our fishing community. They listen.
Just to clarify, Mayor Paxton, Gary
Yes.
Paxton, I think she's asking how you volunteer in the community.
How do I volunteer?
Yes.
Well, yeah. Thank you for asking. Sorry. Well, I've been in my vestry in St. Peter's and senior warden multiple times, and don't ask me tough questions. How do I volunteer besides that? I go to a restaurant with my lovely wife, give big tips.
All right. Stephen Eisenbeis, your response?
Well, I've volunteered for the last 6 years on the assembly. That one definitely counts. But so with the arrival of my son this last year, I've definitely gotten a little bit better at saying no. I'm not as spread thin as I once was. But I think if you look back, that I basically, since I've moved back into town in 2008, have been volunteering and my time in one way or another. Right now, my primary focus is the Sitka Fire Department. I've been there for, I'm going to say 8 years now, I believe, and have rose through the ranks to become a lieutenant. So now I train other firefighters and teach them and lead them into potentially dangerous and hazardous situations. The why? Well, originally I joined the fire hall because I wanted to play softball. They had a softball team, and I wanted to get on that. Dave Miller, in his infinite wisdom, convinced me to change my application from, Robert Denard did as well. I'll have to throw out some credit there. To change my application from auxiliary to the fire division. And so I've been with them for quite some time now. I continue to intend to continue with them. I don't see myself leaving anytime soon. I really like the role that has to offer. If anything, I wish I had a little bit more time to offer it. At times I feel that my service to the fire hall falls short, but rest assured, if there is a fire, you'll probably see my face there.
Thank you both for your responses to that question. I believe we have time for just one more before we have to join in with our scheduled programming this evening. And this question is from Robin. She asks, what do you think is the most important decision the Assembly has made in the last 10 years, and why? And this will go to Stephen first.
Wow, that one really forces you to look back and I guess this is going to feel like a canned answer. I don't want it to feel like a canned answer, but I want it to feel honest and truthful. I don't know that there necessarily has been one best decision, because there's so many different groups in town that each decision affects those groups differently. So some groups will maybe be fairly neutral on a decision, while the others find it to be the absolute best decision that's ever come forward. I can think of our anti-discrimination policy as one where we modified and expanded a lot of anti-discrimination and protections for people in workplace employment. So some groups were fairly neutral on that. To others, that was the best thing that we've done in the last 10 years. So it really just depends on where you sit and where you stand. Not everyone's going to agree with every decision, and I've certainly heard from members of the public who still like my time on the assembly, but they say that they haven't agreed with every decision I made, and that's actually kind of what I hope for, because I don't think that I can make a decision that everyone's going to agree with at every point. So the one greatest thing that we've done in the last 10 years, well, I'm going to go out on a limb, and he better not fail me on this, but I'm going to say the hiring of John Leach. That is a very recent one, but I definitely think we hired the right man for the job in that role. So, John, don't let this one come back to bite me.
Gary Paxton, your response?
He won't. Yeah, I agree with it. Hiring John Leach was one of two. The other thing, I'm going to cheat a little bit, go beyond that. But when I was city administrator and Stan Filler was mayor, we were the first city in Alaska to do an MOU with the Sitka Tribe of Alaska, and I thought that was a standard-setting event. So.
And we have just a couple minutes left, so I'm going to give you each 1 minute to have final thoughts. Why should Sitkans vote for you to be Sitka's next mayor? And we'll start with you, Gary Paxton.
First of all, just go and vote for the person you think is going to do the best for the town. I mean, I think my experience in leadership are important. I do have a good relationship with our delegation, with Bert Stedman, and I honestly, as Steve does, just care about the town. And I think if you know me and you watch what I've done, every decision I make, I try to make it in a manner that's best for our town and for our citizens. That's it.
Stephen?
This one becomes a little bit hard for me too, because I've gotten to a point in my life where I'm perhaps more humble than I used to be, where I don't feel like I need to brag myself up a bunch anymore. So it becomes a lot harder for me to answer questions like this. However, I intend to represent Sitka in the absolute best way possible. I think I've been an open book for the last 6 years. I've been in the public spotlight for the last 6 years. I have matured and grown over the last 6 years to a point where now I believe I am fully capable of taking on the task of leading the assembly. And I tend to represent Sitka in a professional, respectful, inclusive manner. And I intend to get the job done for the next generation Sitka.
All right. I want to thank you both. Thank you both for joining me tonight. Stephen Eisenbeis and Gary Paxton, both candidates running for Sitka's mayor chair this fall. And thanks so much for joining me in the forum this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. Right.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry I couldn't have seen everybody's faces out there, but thanks to those who listened.
And you have been listening to Raven Radio, KCAW Sitka. Thank you to the public for submitting so many questions. If your question wasn't answered, the contact information for the candidates is listed on the city's website, and you can email your questions to them directly. If you missed any of this forum or you'd like to go back and listen again, we'll have the full forum video and audio posted on our website, so you can keep an eye out for that. And while you're at it, you can take a look at our election hub. You can find that on our website at kcaw.org. You'll find candidate statements there, questionnaires, and a sample ballot. And looking forward to the rest of this week. Tune in tomorrow for our school board candidate forum from 6:30 to 8. Then on Thursday from 6:30 to 8:30, we'll host an assembly candidate forum. You can email your questions for those candidates to news@kcaw.org in advance. You've been listening to our mayoral candidate forum on Raven Radio, KCAW Sitka. Up next, we're joining the program Backtracking in Progress.